The morning sun filtered through the towering glass windows of St. Vincent's Medical Center as Mercedes Almeida, 85, made her way through the main lobby with her elegant wooden cane. Her steps were measured but firm, echoing softly across the marble floor she knew like the back of her hand. There was something regal about her posture, even bent by the weight of years, the bearing of someone who had once commanded these corridors with unquestionable authority. "Good morning, Mrs. Mercedes." The security guard at the entrance greeted her, respectfully touching the brim of his cap. It was the same ritual for 3 years, ever since she'd started her physical therapy sessions at the hospital. To everyone, she seemed like just an elegant, well-educated elderly lady who always thanked them with a gentle smile and distributed homemade cookies to the friendliest staff members. Mercedes headed toward the physical therapy wing, passing by the central pharmacy. Something made her stop. Through the half-open door, she observed strange movements. Head nurse Valerie Santos was hurriedly collecting medications, placing them in a personal bag. Her experienced eyes immediately recognized some of the drugs: potent painkillers, high-cost antibiotics, controlled medications that should never leave the hospital without proper prescription. For a moment, Mercedes hesitated. Was it her imagination? At 85, sometimes she doubted her own perception. But no, her mind remained sharp as a scalpel. She knew that routine very well, having supervised every aspect of that hospital for 30 years. She decided not to confront Valerie at that moment. It would be wiser to observe, confirm her suspicions. In the following days, Mercedes arrived a bit earlier for her sessions. Discreetly, she noted the pattern. Always on the first Tuesday of the month, Valerie repeated the same suspicious procedure. The head nurse, a 45-year-old woman with a perpetually sour expression, seemed unaware she was being watched by the elderly physical therapy patient. Mercedes knew she needed to act, but she also knew she needed more evidence before making any accusations. Her experience as a physician had taught her the importance of diagnostic precision. One should never treat without absolute certainty of the problem. Then, everything fell apart. On a rainy Thursday morning, Mercedes had barely set foot in the hospital when she was intercepted by Valerie Santos. The head nurse was accompanied by 2 security guards and wore an expression of false concern that didn't fool the elderly woman's experienced eyes. "Mrs. Mercedes," Valerie said with a honeyed but firm voice, "we need to talk. There's a very delicate situation involving you." Mercedes felt a chill run down her spine. "What's this about?" "There have been reports of some disappearances from the central pharmacy, medications that vanished without explanation." Valerie made a dramatic pause, letting the words sink in. "And you've been seen frequently near that area." Mercedes's heart accelerated, not from fear, but from indignation. "Are you accusing me of theft?" "I'm just investigating all possibilities," Valerie replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You understand, don't you? An elderly person, perhaps confused, who needs many medications. Sometimes these things happen without ill intent." The word confused hit Mercedes like a slap. For decades, she had fought against prejudices related to age and gender in medicine. Now, at 85, she was being treated like a senile thief. "I demand to speak with the chief medical officer immediately," Mercedes said, rising with all the dignity she could muster. "Dr. Harrison has already been informed of the situation," Valerie lied smoothly. "And he agreed that until this is clarified, it would be better for you to suspend your visits to the hospital." Mercedes felt the ground slip from under her feet. "You're banning me from coming here?" "It's just a temporary measure for everyone's good," Valerie said, signaling to the security guards. "I'm sure you understand." But as Mercedes was being escorted out, something else was happening that would make this situation infinitely worse. Valerie's assistant, Jessica, a young, ambitious nurse who harbored her own resentments against the elderly patients who took up too much time, had been recording everything on her phone. Within minutes, the video was uploaded to TikTok with the caption, "Elderly woman caught stealing hospital meds tries to play victim, entitled Boomer, Trachin hospital drama, busted." The video went viral within hours. By evening, it had over 500,000 views, with thousands of comments mocking another entitled boomer who thinks rules don't apply to her. The hospital's social media was flooded with comments praising the staff for finally standing up to these old people who think they own everything. Mercedes, who barely understood social media, was completely unaware of her online humiliation. But her great-niece Sarah, a college student in Boston, saw the video and immediately recognized her great-aunt. She called Mercedes in tears. "Aunt Mercedes, there's a video of you online. They're saying horrible things. I can't believe this is happening." Mercedes felt her world crumble. Not only had she been humiliated in person, but now her dignity was being destroyed in front of millions of strangers. The comments were particularly cruel. "These boomers had everything handed to them and still want more. Probably has dementia and doesn't even remember stealing. Send her to a nursing home already." The story was picked up by local news stations, then national ones. Elderly woman accused of stealing hospital medications became a trending topic. Mercedes became the face of entitled elderly behavior in America, a symbol that social media influencers used to generate content about generational differences. The worst part was yet to come. Dr. Richard Harrison, the current chief medical officer, saw the media coverage and, fearing bad publicity for the hospital, released a statement. "St. Vincent's Medical Center takes all accusations of theft seriously. We are cooperating with authorities to investigate this matter thoroughly." That night, in her elegant apartment in the city's most exclusive neighborhood, Mercedes opened a closet she hadn't touched in 5 years. Inside, carefully organized, were all the documents of her professional life: diplomas, certificates, recognitions, but most importantly, her retirement certificate from St. Vincent's Hospital, where she had served as chief medical officer for 3 decades. With trembling hands, not from age but from contained emotion, Mercedes picked up another document, proof of the $15 million donation she had made for the construction of the new cardiology wing of the hospital 10 years earlier. A donation made anonymously out of modesty, but completely documented. Next to these papers, she found a folder containing something even more valuable: detailed records of irregularities she had investigated in the last months of her active career. Never proven suspicions of medication diversion, always involving mid-level staff who were never properly investigated due to lack of concrete evidence. But there was something else, something that would change everything. Hidden in the deepest part of her files was a folder marked Confidential Board Meetings 2019. Inside were meeting minutes that revealed something shocking. Valerie Santos had been hired, despite failing her background check, which had revealed a previous conviction for prescription drug fraud in another state. The hospital's board, desperate to fill nursing positions during a shortage, had chosen to overlook this minor issue. Even more damning were emails between Dr. Harrison and the hospital's attorney, discussing how to manage the Valerie situation and ensure her past doesn't become a PR problem. They knew. They all knew, and they had chosen to ignore it. Mercedes spent the entire night reviewing every document, every note, every memory. When the sun rose, she knew exactly what to do. Her first call was to the most respected law firm in the city. "Mr. Roberts," she said to the lawyer who had served her family for decades, "I need your services. And I need private investigators. This is a matter of honor." The second call was more painful. Mercedes phoned Dr. Richard Harrison, the current chief medical officer, a man she had personally mentored at the beginning of his career. "Mercedes?" His voice showed genuine surprise. "What a joy to hear your voice. It's been a while since we talked." "Richard," she was direct, "did you authorize my ban from the hospital?" The silence on the other end was revealing. "What ban? Mercedes, what are you talking about?" "Then Valerie Santos lied," Mercedes murmured, more to herself. "Richard, I need to see you urgently. There are things you need to know about your hospital, and about your own involvement in covering up Valerie's criminal background." The silence that followed was deafening. 3 weeks later, Mercedes returned to St. Vincent's Medical Center, but this time she wasn't alone. Walking beside her were Mr. Roberts, her lawyer, 2 private investigators, FBI agent Patricia Coleman, who had been investigating prescription drug trafficking in the area, and a reporter from 60 Minutes who had been following the story. "Mercedes Almeida," murmured an older nurse upon seeing her. "My God, it's really Dr. Mercedes. She built this hospital." The murmur spread through the corridors like wildfire. Older staff members began to approach, some with tears in their eyes upon recognizing the woman who had dedicated her life to that institution. Valerie Santos was found in her office, hastily organizing some papers. When she saw Mercedes enter accompanied by the entourage, her face lost all color. "Valerie," said Dr. Harrison with a controlled but furious voice, "do you know Dr. Mercedes Almeida?" "I don't," Valerie stammered, clearly panicking. "Perhaps I should introduce myself properly," Mercedes said, her voice carrying all the authority she had once wielded in those corridors. "I am Mercedes Almeida, cardiologist, former chief medical officer of this hospital for 30 years, and principal donor for the construction of the wing where you work." The silence in the office was deafening. Valerie seemed to have shrunk in her chair. "For 3 years," Mercedes continued, "I frequented this hospital as a physical therapy patient. 3 years observing, learning, seeing how the institution I helped build was being administered. And what I saw deeply concerned me." Agent Coleman stepped forward. "Mrs. Santos, you're under arrest for conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, wire fraud, and violation of the Controlled Substances Act." "But there's more," Mercedes said, pulling out the confidential folder. "Dr. Harrison, would you like to explain to Agent Coleman why you hired someone with a criminal background in prescription drug fraud and why you covered it up?" Dr. Harrison's face went white as the documents were spread on the table. The emails, the meeting minutes, the deliberate cover-up. Everything was there. "This is what really angers me," Mercedes said, her voice rising for the first time. "Not just the theft, not just the false accusation against me, but the institutional corruption that allowed it to happen. You knew she was a criminal, Richard. You knew, and you put patients at risk because it was convenient for you." The 60 Minutes reporter was capturing everything. "Dr. Almeida, how does it feel to be vindicated after being turned into a viral meme mocking elderly Americans?" Mercedes paused, thinking of all the cruel comments, all the mockery, all the assumptions made about her based purely on her age. "It feels like justice," she said finally. "But more than that, it feels like a teachable moment for our society. We've become so quick to judge, so ready to mock, especially when it comes to older Americans. I became a symbol of everything people hate about my generation, when in reality, I was just an elderly woman trying to do the right thing." The story exploded across social media, but this time with a different narrative. Justice for Mercedes began trending. The original TikTok video was taken down, but not before Jessica, the nurse who had recorded it, was also arrested as part of the drug trafficking ring. The revelation that Mercedes was not only innocent, but was actually the hospital's founder and biggest donor sent shockwaves through the media landscape. Talk shows scrambled to book her. Social media influencers who had mocked her now posted apology videos. But the biggest revelation was yet to come. During the FBI investigation, it was discovered that the drug trafficking ring was much larger than anyone had imagined. Valerie Santos wasn't just stealing medications. She was part of an interstate operation that had stolen over $2 million worth of prescription drugs from hospitals across 3 states. The operation included doctors, nurses, and even some hospital administrators who were paid to look the other way. Dr. Harrison was arrested 2 days later, along with 3 board members who had been aware of the cover-up. The scandal became the biggest healthcare fraud case in the state's history. Mercedes found herself at the center of a media firestorm, but this time as a hero. The woman who had been mocked as a senile boomer thief was now being hailed as a whistleblower who had exposed a massive criminal conspiracy. "Mrs. Almeida," asked a CNN reporter during a press conference, "what would you say to all the people who mocked you online before they knew the truth?" Mercedes looked directly into the camera. "I would say that this is exactly why we shouldn't rush to judgment, especially about older Americans. We live in a society that's quick to dismiss us as irrelevant, confused, or entitled, but we have experience, wisdom, and yes, we still have value. I spent my entire career serving others, and I wasn't about to stop just because someone wanted to make me a scapegoat." She paused, her voice growing stronger. "But I also want to say something to other elderly Americans who might be facing similar discrimination. Don't be silent. Don't accept being treated as less than human because of your age. You have rights, you have dignity, and you have the right to be treated with respect." The hospital underwent a complete overhaul. A new board was elected, new leadership was installed, and Mercedes was asked to serve as an advisory consultant to help rebuild the institution's integrity. Months later, when the scandal had settled and life at the hospital had returned to a new normal, Mercedes continued her daily visits. But now, in addition to physical therapy, she had taken on an informal role as an advisor and mentor to younger staff members. One afternoon, while walking through the familiar corridors, Mercedes stopped in front of a plaque that hadn't been there before. The Mercedes Almeida Center for Medical Ethics and Patient Advocacy, donated with love and dedication by our eternal Chief Medical Officer. Her eyes filled with tears, this time tears of gratitude and fulfillment. At 85, she had learned that it's never too late to fight for justice, to defend your dignity, to make a difference. But the most satisfying moment came 6 months later, when Mercedes received a letter from a 78-year-old woman in Florida who had seen her story on the news. "Dear Dr. Almeida," the letter read, "I wanted to thank you for showing us that we don't have to accept being invisible or dismissed just because we're old. Last week I reported my own suspicions about medication theft at my local clinic, and because of your example, I had the courage to speak up. They found evidence of fraud, and several patients will now get the proper medications they need. You showed me that our voices still matter." Mercedes smiled as she read the letter. Sometimes, she thought, it takes a storm to clear the air and make everything clearer. And some storms, she reflected with a smile, come in the form of apparently fragile ladies with unbreakable spirits and the wisdom that only comes from decades of fighting for what's right. The viral video that had once humiliated her was now used in medical ethics classes across the country as an example of ageism in healthcare and the importance of not judging based on appearances. Mercedes Almeida had become more than a symbol. She had become a catalyst for change in how America treats its elderly citizens, and in the halls of St. Vincent's Medical Center, her watchful presence continued, ensuring that the institution she had helped build remained true to the values she had always defended: respect, dignity, and genuine care for all who needed help, because sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one everyone underestimates.